Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our webinar on Sep Mobile and cloud security. My name is Mike Dunham. I'm the president of Intuitive Technology Group, and I really do appreciate you taking some time out of your afternoon or morning, I guess, to meet with us and talk a little bit about Sep Mobile and cloud security. My hope is that with today's presentation that you'll get a good sense of how this product can help you in your environment, how it fits into the larger Symantec infrastructure, as well as into your larger security practice and your IT operations and security. So just as a couple of quick housekeeping things, some of you may be familiar with Intuitive Technology Group, others we may be new to you, and I just wanted to let you know a little bit about our company. We actually were founded 13 years ago, so we've been in business for quite a while. We do a whole lot of work in IT systems management and security, in DevOps, in big data, as well as lean and agile. So we help companies do things securely and help them continually improve themselves. And hopefully that message will resonate as we take a look at the Sep Mobile and cloud security products today. As far as today's presentation, we're quite fortunate that we're actually able to secure Brian Rawls to speak with us. He has a long background in Symantec products as well as security in general. He has been doing this for over 7 years and has been through a number of different security products and vendors, and so he has the nice perspective of being able to not only speak to the Sep products, but also how they compare to some of the other pieces and how they tie in. So I think you'll find today's presentation extremely compelling. And again, I think I want to thank you for your time. So with that, I'm going to actually switch decks and we'll go ahead and have Brian get started. So let me go ahead and just call up the other deck, and here we go. Brian, please take over.
Thank you for that very much. I really appreciate you having me on today. So as Mike stated, I'm Brian Rawls. I'm the Symantec Solutions Architect at Ingram Micro. I focus on Symantec for almost 2 years now, and as we were talking about, I also supported 35 other different vendors within the security realm. You kind of name it, I've done it, from SMB to high enterprise vendors. I supported them all, so I kind of see the landscape where everything kind of fits in. And one reason we're going with Sep Mobile and kind of the cloud architecture today, and I want to highlight some of these products, is because nobody's really doing it the same way as Symantec with these products, and they're really at the forefront of engineering this stuff and being in front of those threats. So that's why I really wanted to highlight all this for you today. So let me go down to the next slide here, the agenda. So today we're going to cover, and the majority of this will be Symantec Endpoint Mobile. That's their mobile protection, the SkyCure acquisition. And then we'll cover the Symantec cloud portfolio and where all the integrations and different products. And I'll cover those very high level. But we can always, follow that up afterwards as well if you had more questions about those. Next slide. So we're going to start covering Symantec Endpoint Mobile. As I said, it's the mobile threat defense for the cloud generation. Next slide. Oh, one more. Sorry about that. We had some deck and sharing confusion. So Mike's gonna change the slides for me here, so just bear with us. So first you have to understand is the actual threat vectors, which are here stated by SANS Institute. So we took this from them. We feel this is very important and really to identify where everybody resides as far as a mobile threat landscape. So first, we have to look at the threats themselves, the vectors, the physical, the malware, the network, and then the actual application and OS vulnerabilities. So when we're looking at the physical piece of this, we're looking at things like, there's new things like a USB threat where you plug into a malicious wall charger and they can actually exfiltrate your information, or like a Bluetooth drive-by. So that's, examples of physical. Malware, we're talking traditional malware you'd find on a PC or a Mac. You know, your viruses, Trojans, all the different things. Pretty standard. Most people know about that. The next big piece of this is networking. Networking is the number one thing you really have to be fearful of when you're on a mobile device, because you're on so many more networks throughout a day. It's somewhere registered somewhere between 10 times more networks you're on through mobile Wi-Fi hotspots than you would be with a PC every day. So that's a big change. I mean, you're going from airports to hotels, back to the office, back to your home, to the coffee shop. You're always on some network along the way. And then the actual app vulnerabilities. So this isn't just about bad apps and identifying those and blocking those, but it's also the good apps that might not be patched or updated that we have to identify and patch so they don't become vulnerabilities, as well as the operating updates on these as well. So the operating system on your Android or iPhone is not up to snuff. We have to make sure it is, so we're not leaving any gaps where they could actually introduce their own code or to have a way to exfiltrate information or a way to get into your device itself. Slide. So the differentiators, that's what we're really going to get into now, and what I always like to do because of my background, and I've seen 35 different vendors out there. I want to tell you why we are different from the competition, and we're going to walk through that right now. Slide. So the first thing to understand is how an EMM and MDM solutions from the competition work. So these are more about managing the devices more than securing the devices, even though some of them have small security benefits for mobile compliance management and different pieces of that, but they need that communication in order to work. So we'll click the next slide to bring the next piece up. So when something happens, a threat on your device, as it's shown here, click, and then it'll actually have to communicate back to the EMM solution. Whatever the actual solution may be, we actually do integrate into all those as well, and I'll get into that. But the communication has to be there. So the device itself gets compromised, detected. The device needs to reach out to the EMM solution, Enterprise Mobile Management Solution. That solution calls back to the device with corrective measures so it knows how to defend against that threat. Next slide. Now, what happens if there's a man-in-the-middle attack and that connection is impaired, it's stopped, you cannot communicate anymore? Click. Next slide. It's got to click through, sorry. So essentially the same thing happens. Something's detected on the device. The device is known and is told to call back to the EMM solution. The man in the middle stops that over the network. And then also the command that would correct that issue also is stopped by that man in the middle attack. So no actions can be taken place, which means that device is no longer secure. And that's the point I'm kind of making is a lot of these devices are managing devices. They're not truly securing them because if something simple like a man-in-the-middle attack happens on your network, you cannot communicate. Your devices are not secure. So just keep that in mind. Next slide. So, well, I think that's weird. Where did it go? Okay, I went to the wrong thing. Okay, no problem. Sorry about that. So this is actually how things work out. So when you're talking about threat defense tools, it's a mix of vulnerability management, anomaly detection, behavioral, code emulation, intrusion prevention, firewalling, things that you might be somewhat familiar with. And then when we actually get into the threat intelligence piece of this, it's one of the differentiating components of the Sep Mobile solution. We used a thing called crowdsourced threat intelligence. It's like a layer of threat defense we use in these products, and it works with our GIN, our network, a global network. It compiles all this information. Every device is a sensor, and it notes all the different devices on the Sep Mobile network that are plugged into it, and it's taking note of good and bad Wi-Fi hotspots as it goes through. So I have an example of that in the next slide, but we'll get to that in a second. The next piece of this you need to know is the cloud server itself. So this gives you visibility It gives you the advanced security against all the threats. And then it's real time and compliance score enforcement as well. So if you're using things like EMMs and MDMs and SIMs, we can actually relay that information directly to them because they have direct APIs. So visibility and then enhanced management if we do want to use the other platforms for the management piece of this while we secure this with the Sep Mobile. And the last piece I want to really mention is the cloud app. So the cloud app is interesting because not every vendor is doing this. Actually, very few are doing this, where you can go onto the public app stores and download the software. Why is that important? Is because they have to go through all the regulations of the security and compliance measures that the Play Store and the Apple Store have in place in order to do that. So that's the first step of security. Plus provisioning this and implementing this is much easier because all your users can download this on their own phone. It's a default configuration set up in 5 minutes. And then once everything is connected through the cloud portal, you can make all your policy changes and everything, and that pushes out to devices. So very easy to manage through the cloud interface as well. Plus it's easy provisioned and easy managed. Next slide, please. Now this is what I'm talking about. So the mobile threat intelligence piece, this is pretty cool. So in this example, we're actually gathering information about the public free Wi-Fi using that crowd wisdom that I told you about. It's a global thing. It's through our global intelligence network, as I said. What we're doing is finding expected ISP patterns in this. And then when we find one that's not expected, or if it's a rogue AP, we're identifying that and then letting everyone else on this network essentially know, and everyone else that has Sep Mobile know, because it's a global network and it shares all the information. So we're not finding just good Wi-Fi, we're identifying bad Wi-Fi as well, and we're mapping the good Wi-Fi for you so you know where to connect, so you know that's a good network and safe. Next slide. So the piece I'm talking about is the integrations. We're going to talk about a little later as well. We have a security cloud portfolio that's going to strengthen this. It integrates, it's a cyber defense platform for securing all your endpoints. It's good for the safe Wi-Fi hotspots, as I said. You use a smart VPN tunnel to make sure information is encrypted. We can add things like our VIP authentication, so we want access control as well, so we can do multi-factor. We can do the secure web service, which is web safe browsing. And then we have the CASB aspect. I'm not sure if you're familiar with CASB. It refers to Cloud Access Security Broker. That's for the shadow IT, they refer to it as, is what applications are being used in your environment and who's using them, and what type of data is going back and forth to those. And many people don't know this, and I'll get more in depth to this. Most people, it's almost 20 times more than they expect in their environment. Most people say it's 30 to 50. It's more in the range of 300 to 900 applications throughout most environments that are being used beyond your backs, essentially. And we don't know how the information is being moved without that visibility. So we'll get into that a little deeper too later.
Hey, Brian, also, if I can interrupt you, for those of you who haven't had a chance to attend our webinar series, we will include in our follow-up a link to some of our previous webinars. And our last webinar was actually on the topic of selecting and implementing a CASB solution. So it dovetails nicely into what you're talking about today, Brian.
Sure, no, sounds great. What solution was that, if you don't mind me asking?
What's that?
What?
The Symantec's CASB.
Oh, beautiful. That's great. The cloud stock. Good. I'm gonna reinforce that for you today, which is even better. Good side note there. That's perfect. Just so you guys know, I'll be taking my SCS certification on CloudSoc. That's the Symantec CASB on December 6th. So I'm also going to be an expert on that as well. If you have any questions going forward on that, and if we kind of discuss that as well, if we want to have another webinar about CASB, if there's more interest, I'd be happy to do that as well for everybody. All right, next slide. All right, so just kind of want to run through this a little bit. There's a lot of solutions out there on the market. They leverage just file lever and signature based things to identify your jailbroken devices, things like that. they're, continue to be used. Today's attacks are definitely more sophisticated. We got to get past the basics. So with Sep Mobile, we had the ability to use that crowdsourced wisdom, the threat intelligence I mentioned, and it collects all the information, and it's kind of constructs like a baseline. So it knows where your device is, if it's secure, everything's, baseline secure and compliant. And then it used that image to detect, advanced and zero-day attacks that might emerge beyond that. So it kind of puts all that information and then goes to the next level. It'll actually analyze the app metadata. So all the what is going on, what about the data, if you're not familiar with what metadata is, which is required for permission levels, developer and application sources. We also do the signature-based matching as well as application structured dissectation. And then we need that to identify threats. While this is connected, we upload to the cloud server for further analysis. So that's where it goes deeper. Everything's being done on the server as far as the analysis itself. This is a cloud-based product, so GUI interface, which is nice. Nothing to install on premise. And that should, be able to block any of the bad installs of applications, notice any viruses on your devices, any of those threat vectors that we discussed. It is made to specifically stop those vectors. Next slide, please. So once all that data is uploaded, what happens to it? So it is more detailed analysis of that metadata's code structure. It places it in a new instance of malware, anything into this kind of like a sandbox environment to make sure anything that needs to be deployed gets deployed. And then it uses that crowd wisdom for attack profiling. Make sure we know what legitimate apps are and which are not legitimate apps. And then if anything has been repackaged as far as apps to make sure that, those are not threats as well. And then for more further analysis, we do a static and a dynamic analysis engine that helps uncover additional hidden malware attributes on top of all that. So we really dig in on multiple layers is kind of where I'm going with this, to make sure that this is secure in every different one of those threat layers. Next slide, please. So this is kind of the cool stuff. That's all the stuff I got to get through and just tell you all the great, analysis pieces of it. I know can get a little boring. It's a little tedious. I can get deeper if anybody has questions. But this is the cool stuff. I'm going to show you some pictures and some of the interface itself. So protective actions and sensitive corporate resources. So this is really where you get into how to provision this. And it's very easy, and this is how it's constructed, is it literally is radio buttons and check boxes. You say, yes, I want this, no, I want this, to turn it on and off. So when we're in the actual management interface, we can block access for instance here as it's showing, is sensitive corporate resources through a policy restriction. And we can also block access to the corporate Wi-Fi or any communication to CNC servers. So CNC servers, if you're not familiar, are servers that hackers use to exfiltrate their information and send it to. So if there are, and there's hundreds and thousands of these known servers, we can just check that box and say, yep, if there's any known CNC servers, let's restrict those. Perfect. Next slide. The next piece is under protective actions. You can prevent the installation of malicious applications and determine existing malicious apps that are already on and running on the device. There's 3 settings for each of these, so you can kind of decide where you want to be and how restrict. So you can never prevent the action, prevent if it's a medium to a high risk based on your policies, or we can restrict on high risk applications. Those are the 3 that we have there as the drop down. And then from that, next slide, we can actually pick which actions and what the sensitive corporate data is and work hand in hand with that. So if a device becomes non-compliant, we're able to use that information and then set up things like a VPN. And I'll show you how that kind of works as well. That'll network, use a VPN through the compromised network so you can still get to those sensitive applications for your corporate resources. Slide. So right here, so this is kind of how it works. So you have a device on the left-hand side if you're facing your screen. Everything's good, everything's green. The device gets a vulnerability on it. It becomes non-compliant. So what happens here is it's saying is when the device is detected being compromised for network or vulnerabilities, it extends the threshold level we just determined, becomes non-compliant. The access to specific corporate resources are denied. So it means that if you have Office 365, if you have Salesforce, we just regulated that if that device or your network is compromised, we will not let the flow of data from those resources to your device, so it cannot be exfiltrated or seen in clear text or however it may be. So we take those actions. We have an alert that's sent out. It is a notification to make sure that we know this is happening to an admin and to the user, so we know what restrictions there are. Next slide. So the next piece of this is Sep Mobile protect the.
Brian,
yeah.
Oh, sorry. A question came in on that. Is there a remediation out of this as well to get the? So if I block a device, can I remediate it from the console as well?
So if it becomes non-compliant?
Yes.
So yes, so essentially you're gonna have to take a look at the interface, and I'll show you the interface a little bit later as well. So it becomes non-compliant. Essentially there are ways to go through the interface to do some remediation actions. It doesn't get too deep or involved. But you can go into that device and make sure that that vulnerability has been, whatever it may be. It could be that something was hacked, so that piece of it we can't do. But if it's, an application that needs to be removed, we can remove that application. There are some things we can do and some things we can't. Viruses aren't as much remediation. It's more on the application side and the actual operating systems and updates and things we can do. As far as the viruses, it's identified, and then we'd have to go through with another tool to remove that virus from that device itself, or basically take that device off the network to make sure that device virus has been removed.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So the next piece here, when we want to establish that VPN tunnel, we have the ability to do that as well. So I'll just get to the next slide because the checkboxes are here. So we have the sensitive actions checkboxed here, which we kind of discussed, and then the VPN tunnel. So essentially what we're doing is turning on that functionality of VPN tunnel. So in this instance for the device that got compromised, what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, well, this is a vulnerability. It doesn't say exactly what it is, but if it was a network vulnerability, we could just VPN across it without being compromised at all. So if we get into the next slide, I'll show you that. It's kind of neat. So same thing with the device here, it becomes non-compliant. We have a man-in-the-middle attack for my example once again. The network's compromised. So if possible, we establish a VPN tunnel back to our corporate resources. So your device, even though it's been compromised or that network's been compromised, we can continue using Office 365 and Salesforce, for example, or Gmail, or whatever the actual application that you deem safe or is used publicly. If that doesn't work, click the slide, please. There we go. Then we can actually do the sensitive corporate resources section of this, in which we restrict those applications that are corporate sensitive data, and then we still allow you to Facebook and social media if that's what you deem through your policies. So two ways of doing this. We prefer, let's make sure you have no downtime if it's a network compromise and get you to that access to those resources. If that's not possible, we restrict those applications to make sure that no data is exfiltrated, and that's the main purpose of this. It'd be nice to do the VPN, like I said, but it doesn't always work, in certain instances. But one way or another, it's not going to be stolen. That's the main point. Slide. So, and this is just a screenshot of the dashboard. I do have the interface as well, just for the time's sake and everything. I can show a demo of the interface if anybody wants to see that. Mostly this is all management. So you're just seeing all the incidents and everything broke down. So it's kind of like the snapshot view of everything that you can see. So everything here, you see the posture, you see your general information, who's compliant, who's not compliant, what percentages, what the recent incidents are, the protective actions. So as we had the question there, what actions have been taken to correct those measures? We can do that in that section there as we drill down. Each one of these you can do that. And then how everything actually scrolls, and there's more here, but the top section has most of what you can see. And it's just the dashboard. So at the very top, you have the user devices, You have the installation health of the applications. You have incidents and network, operating systems. So you can really drill down into all the information and have all this very visible on the dashboard. And like I said, that's just in the cloud. So nothing that really needs to be installed, on premise as well. So very easy cloud application to deploy. Next slide, please. So this is the piece I was talking about, mobile management and the mobile security piece of it that we can do. So enterprise mobile management systems, they're good at managing devices, as I said, unless they're compromised. And that's the big piece of this. So mobile application management for application level access and control can be done. The mobile content management can be done on the EMN solution. But when you link these together, if that man-in-the-middle tech happens, and I hate to keep using that, but it's a perfect example, the communication's broken, your device still needs to be secure. And that's really where we come in, is if that is compromised in the network, the mobile device is still secure, but you can also add all the management interfaces that the actual platform on, your EMMs, your ARC serves, your mobile irons, and all the different ones out there, they do have really robust managing and reporting. I'm not saying they don't, but add our solution to it, then they work really good hand in hand. So you can have that device security and you can have all those robust management features as well. Next slide, please. So all that, what's happened over the last year is through the SkyCure acquisition, we got the Sep Mobile rebranded product, which is the top section here. So your traditional endpoint on cloud, which had some device components of it for mobile. Now what they did is they took all of those features and all that information I just discussed and added that in the next operating system version going forward of the Sep Cloud product. So now if you're buying Sep Cloud, you can get the majority of the Sep Mobile features put into that license automatically, which is kind of nice. Next slide, please. So the initial architecture I showed you, I changed this a little bit, just a couple little things that I wanted to add. So now with the SkyCure acquisition, with the Sep Mobile piece we all discussed, we can add that functionality to Sep Cloud. So that's securing all your endpoints now. We had the VIP discussion with the authentication, the web security service, which is safe browsing, the smart VPN for encryption over that internet. We have the CASB, which we slowly, just started to discuss a little bit. And that pushes us into the cloud applications themselves and visibility. But then if you're doing things like Office 365, you need an email security solution, which we offer now. It's emailsecurity.cloud, it's referred to as an additional component to that. So if you, and this is the biggest visibility hole we have, and I'll get into this a little bit as well, is everybody's doing a lot in the cloud now, and the borders are breaking down. I mean, we do have traditional perimeter defense, but a lot of the business is being run outside of that, and you really don't understand where and when it's happening. So if we can tie all these components together, we can actually have a nice cloud security strategy to go outside those borders and make sure everything's secure on the outside. Next slide. So I'm going to get into the next piece of this. So I'm going to go through just each individual product real quick here. Nothing, I think there's like 1, 2 to 3 slides on each. Nothing too crazy. So right here, we're talking about the Symantec VIP. Essentially, it helps prevent the unauthorized access to sensitive networks and applications. So it's a great addition to the Sep Mobile product. Is kind of where I was going with that. So it adds that multi-factor authentication. A cool piece of this, and I'll share kind of like my little story, is I have this on multiple financial institutions. And I had the question because I'm like, okay, well, I have one of my banks using VIP, the multi-factor, and then I have 2 other financial institutions. How is that going to work? So what it does is actually, it has a really cool interface. So if you have multiple instances of it, you actually can set on your instances what financial institution or what you're trying to do, and you can use the access and then that code generation and that multi-factor authentication for the business or the transaction that you're doing at that time. So it's kind of neat how this breaks out, and my own personal view of this and how it works for me. I have the app on my phone, and I have multiple financial institutions. I click on my bank and I go to that one, and then I click on the other financial institution and I go to that one. And it works really well, and it all integrates really nicely. So just kind of my own little highlight there. Next piece of this, I'll go down to the next slide, is the web security service. So this is essentially proxy in the cloud, if you're familiar with proxy SG, and then they're adding their content analysis engine to it as a service in the cloud. So the server somewhere, and then we can pull in all of our infrastructure, software as a service, all our social and collaboration needs. And when we go through all this, we can actually start breaking this down. So proxy SG, we inspect and identify any malicious payloads. We can strip, we can block, we can replace web content to mitigate those risks. And then there's like a data loss prevention piece of that in there as well. With the content analysis engine, it does dynamic and static and reputation-based analysis to expose more malware than other ones do. It does detailed forensics. It has that threat intelligence piece, and then the sandboxing element as well to deploy anything that seems to be risky in a safe environment. SSL inspection. So SSL inspection is a great piece, and any proxy, not just this proxy, is most hackers nowadays are just encrypting their actual payloads, their emails, whatever it may be, because most firewalls pass encrypted traffic. So it's a really easy way to get your data or your traffic through a firewall by just encrypting it. By doing SSL inspection or deep inspection, whatever you refer to it as, we can actually get into that, de-encrypt it, make sure there's nothing wrong with it, re-encrypt it and pass it on. And because proxy SG in the service is Symantec and it's dedicated to doing this, it doesn't burden like a firewall might. So if you put, and I don't know if anybody's experienced this, you put deep packet inspection on a firewall, you better oversize that firewall 2 or 3 times or you're going to cripple it. So that's a great thing to have, is the SSL or deep packet inspection. And then web isolation. This is another acquisition, and why I want to mention it, because not many people do this. So we have a new product that it was the Fireglass acquisition. We integrated web isolation into the web security service and email isolation into our email security.cloud platform. So essentially, the web isolation creates a secure executions environment between the users and the web. By executing web sessions remotely, we can send safe rendered information to the browser and then isolates and eliminates any web-borne threats from reaching the device. So essentially what's happening is when you go to your browser, it's shooting that information to a server. The server is doing all the back end and rendering everything and sending back a page that has nothing else on it but what you're trying to view. And we'll get into that a little further as well with the email product. But essentially, there's no way for the threat to actually emerge on a web page on your device because it's not happening on your device. You're just seeing an image of that web page. It's actually happening on a server somewhere. Kind of cool technology. Next page, please. So this is the cool one. This is CASB. I'm learning all about this. I'm really excited about this one. So there's lots of different things and a lot of traffic going outside of that perimeter, as I said, with cloud apps and services. So we are talking about, and it says here, variety of endpoints, shadow IT. So what applications are being used, who are using them, where are they being used, what data is flowing back and forth. It's a big problem today. And how do we conquer that problem? So the next piece is, and that's kind of what this CASB does. Next slide, please. So I will take you through, there's actually the modules at the bottom there, the audit, the detect, protect, investigate, securelets and gatelets. So sounds like a lot, but it's really not. Everybody has a purpose. So the audit piece is actually the one that connects to your firewalls and your proxy and pulls logs off of those to get visibility to identify risky cloud applications. So it's pulling that traffic, and then we can tag those in audit in order to go back and provision those in the firewalls or proxies, because the audit piece doesn't do the remediation. The next piece is detect. Detect is actually looking at user behavior. So we actually can establish risk scores through detect module based on the user and the user's device. So if a user is actually, has a pattern, it's machine learning is what it's really doing. You log in a certain time in the morning, you log out in a certain time at night. You have so much data flowing. You have, certain size packets and certain size files and folders you go to. If you go outside of that time and download a large file or, whatever it may be, it's going to start tagging you and increasing that risk score as you go through it. So if you have a higher risk score or you're going to things you're not supposed to, we can actually start to set policies in the other modules to block risky users. It's similar to like an IPS IDS system, if you're familiar with those. The next module would be protect. So protect is actually where we create policies. So just what you think, it's very DLP-like. So there's actually a DLP engine in this running all this piece. So you go in and you set up all your policies based on all the things that you found and audit and detect and base your policies on those. Pretty straightforward. The next piece of that would be investigate. So we see all the activities in the cloud applications that we've connected. We also can conduct analysis on those through this engine and then create policies. And that's kind of where it works hand in hand with Protect, where it actually can create the policies, but the policies that it found through the log analysis system part of it are actually being done in Protect. And then the securelets and gatelets. So think of securelets as data at rest and gatelets as data in motion. And that's really what they're for. And there's APIs for securelets. I believe there's 15 securelets right now in the CASB solution from Symantec you can connect to. All the most well-known ones, your Office 365 and Salesforces and things like that, and Box. So you can tag that information, pull what you need out of it, find out where they're going, what applications, and the biggest piece that I mentioned before on the CASB product, most people tell us that there's 20 to 50 applications being used in their organization, and there's hundreds, and you just don't know about them. So how do you actually stop people from going those, sharing information, especially sensitive information, to those, and how do you know how it's being shared? Is it being shared publicly? Is it being shared where it can be found on the internet? How do you have insight into that without a tool like this in this new generation without these borders? So I just want to emphasize that. Like I said, I'm getting really deep in the CASB piece of this. So if you have more questions, we can always follow this up with another webinar after this. Next slide, please. So the next piece of this, and I kind of mentioned it, email security.cloud product. So that's where we can do a tie-in integration to things like Office 365 for that email piece. And I know what everybody says, oh, Office 365 comes with a security element of it. Well, that's great because it only catches about 80% of everything. So what are you going to do with the other 20%? As far as the documents and third-party studies I've seen, ours is about 98% catch rate versus the 80% that they're claiming on the Office 365. And I don't want to bash anybody else. I'm just kind of giving you a reference point as they're not as secure as they might be telling you. So we got to add something else to that to make sure they are. So with this, and you can kind of see, and I know a lot of people are familiar with security, so I'm not going to get too crazy into this, but we offer the spam protection and malware, the phishing defense, and then the zero-day exploits on this as well. So all the things that you're familiar with, we have the emulation, we have the behavioral-based pieces, with the advanced pieces, the sandboxing pieces. So when things are found, we can deploy them in safe environments. It's a very encompassing solution and actually has more checkboxes if you're doing a side-by-side than a lot of the other vendors out there. And I did work with ones like Proofpoint and Cisco and different email solutions. We stack up just as well as they do. We're just not as well known at this point because this is the newer product. So keep that in mind. Next slide. So getting a little deeper into this, so most email securities, they rely on the reactive blacklist or signatures. So we're going a little step beyond that. So everybody needs them because that's 80% of your traffic is essentially signature based. So the Symantec email security offers protection against malware links using email threat isolation. Similar to what I was just telling you with the web isolation piece. They do this by virtualizing browsers in highly secure disposable containers. So it's kind of like sandboxing, but not entirely like sandboxing. It's a remote environment, like I said, on a server somewhere else, that can execute this in real time and guarantees only safe rendered resources are sent to the user. So that's essentially what the web is doing as well. I discussed is it's not happening on your device. It's happening somewhere else, and it's only rendering what is needed for you to look at that page. When we get to the next slide, and we'll hit the next slide, this is another piece of it. So if you're actually looking at a page, and a lot of hackers out there will send you something on an email and you click the link and it looks just like your banking site. So you start filling in your password, your usernames, everything like that. Well, with this tool and this isolation, it restricts you from putting your passwords and usernames into text fields if it found a threat back at that server that's analyzed this and has isolated it. So you can no longer share your passwords in clear text if that was found to be a malicious website from that email link. So kind of a cool piece of that. Next slide, please. So in summary, so with this architecture, we can secure all the endpoints. We can do the authentication of the users that are going to those endpoints, which is usually a big piece of this, and catching a lot of threats just by knowing it's the right person logging into different devices and sites. We can allow secure email and web browsing, and then we gain visibility into all those cloud applications that we discussed that you might not know about. And that's it. Last slide. Any questions on this?
Hey, Brian, we actually did receive a handful of questions. One of the questions was, and I apologize, I didn't get to it in time when it came up, but you were showing the crowdsourcing, and the question came in, is that leveraging or integrated with the Sonar engine that's part of Sep?
As far as
kind of a in the weeds technical question, but
no, it is. So that's exactly what it does. So all the technologies are kind of coming together right now. So Sep 14 going into Sep 15, Sep Cloud with the integration of the Sep Mobile features, and then the full-blown Sep Mobile, which is the enterprise mobile to tie with the Sep 14 and Sep 15, are sharing all the features. So things like Sonar are definitely going to be included if they're not already included with all these different features, because all these products are really just coming together as very specific needs, but all the feature sets are almost the same. All the ways things are analyzed are the same. All the ways that things integrate into the GIN, the network, the global intelligence network, everything's being shared, because most people don't know it, but machine learning, for instance, has been done by Symantec for pretty much 20 to 25 years. I don't know exactly how long it's been done, but they've been doing things like this before they were even coined the terms that you're familiar with. So the answer is yes, it is. The Sonar piece will be included in that and how things are analyzed, but so much more to come. And to my point is, Symantec's already been doing this stuff for so long. And I know a lot of these new vendors are coming out as well, claiming they're great machine learning. If you know anything about machine learning, it's only as good as how long it's been around. So keep that in mind when we're talking about stuff like that.
Sounds good. So we had another question, again, a little bit more technical, but can I see my mobile devices in the same screen as my PCs, or do I use the API to integrate between the Sep and the Sep Mobile environments?
So the Sep and Sep Cloud, you will, but the on-prem would still be separate, I believe, and I had to confirm this. Dan Williams, who's on with me, take a note. Let's reach out to Kat Pelak and see if that's going to be in the update for the Sep 15, which is the new version of Sep 14. I'll give you a better answer. I'm pretty sure in Sep 15 that will be possible, but right now they are separate.
Sounds good. And had a clarification question on the VIP. Oh, actually, just got a little bit of feedback that, in fact, that will be in Sep 15, so that has been addressed. Another question that came in, a little bit off topic, but certainly part of the VIP question was just a point of clarification. So what you were saying with the VIP is that you can both integrate your two-factor for your personal stuff as well as your work stuff on the single token app that's riding on your phone.
Exactly right. Yes, very much so.
Perfect. Oh, okay. Yep. Good deal. And then the question came in about proxy and CASB. The question was, so can I then use my proxy to integrate between my or to I'm afraid I don't quite understand the question. If you could reword it. Hang on one second, please.
Sure.
You know what? I guess we'll pass on that one. The question had something to do with integration between CASB and proxy, and I'm afraid I don't quite have.
I'll answer that without knowing the entire question a little bit. So if you go actually into the screens in the audit section and you are adding devices, you can add 6 different forms of data. And then each one of those, you can pick a firewall vendor or proxy vendor that you can actually pull that information from. And through the one piece of this, we have something called Span VA, which is a virtual machine essentially that pulls that data from. So all you gotta do is spin up the Span VA, and that will actually pull those logs off of those firewalls and proxy devices. As long as they're on the approved list, and there's a lot of them on the approved list, hopefully that might have answered your question. But I hope that did.
Sounds good. And then I received a comment from somebody that the DLP features within CASB aren't necessarily to be confused with the full DLP solution.
Correct.
The legacy Vontu that's part of Symantec as well. So thank you for that clarification.
Yes, no, correct. It integrates very well. So you are getting, I'd say, more of a basic DLP functionality. And for some businesses, that's enough. When you get into compliances and different things, you might need the more robust version of it. But we actually integrate directly into the full-blown enterprise version of that as well. So you can get deeper into your policies and, push things out more on an enterprise level. So I'm glad that
sounds good. Say we got another one regarding integrating Sep Mobile with Mass 360. Do you have any details or
100%.
Comments about how?
I know how. I don't know how. I know we can. Mass 360 is definitely on the list. If you want, I can get more details about that. I really don't play with that product too often, but I'm sure I can dig up what products. So the question was how it integrates, or what is I can follow up with?
The question was how, and I think that's a great one to take offline. We'll follow up with you directly. Thanks for the question.
Perfect.
Let's give it just a couple more minutes to see if any more questions funnel in. And while we do that, again, I will say thank you to Brian for taking the time to share this information. Again, for all of you in attendance, we do record these sessions and share them on our YouTube page. So certainly, as Brian mentioned, a number of additional cloud Symantec products. We have actually done some webinars on some of them, so it's definitely worth swinging by that site and picking up some additional webinars. And we do have some follow-up webinars coming. Some of the future ones will include integration between Symantec's Altiris Asset Management and various service desk products. And we also have some Windows 10 related ones, and we have additional CASB and Workspace webinars coming up as well, so please watch for those. In the meantime, that seems to be it on our questions. So again, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you, Brian, for a great presentation.
Thank you.
And we will look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks on our next webinar. So thanks everybody. Have a great day.